Hello Britain! Welcome back to the show where we dissect the news with the precision of a brain surgeon, but with jokes hopefully funnier. Today we're diving headfirst into the swirling vortex of uncertainty that is the UK benefit system. Our guide through this bureaucratic labyrinth is the esteemed political editor of the BBC, Chris Mason. He's been following every twist and turn of this story, and trust me, there are more twists than a pretzel factory in a tornado. Why should you care about benefits changes, you ask? Well, because it affects millions of people, directly impacting their livelihoods and well-being. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, these are real lives hanging in the balance. So, buckle up, dear viewers, as we attempt to untangle this web of uncertainty and see what the future holds for those reliant on the UK benefit system.
Check, check, check one, check two, check, check.
Right then, let's get down to brass tacks. Chris Mason paints a picture of a government caught between a rock and a hard place. The cost of living is skyrocketing and people are feeling the pinch. The government, on the one hand, wants to help those struggling to make ends meet. On the other hand, they're also worried about the economy and the ever-looming deficit. It's a classic case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Mason highlights the Chancellor's predicament: increase benefits in line with inflation and risk fueling further economic turmoil, or refuse and face the wrath of millions struggling to put food on the table. It's a tough call, no doubt. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Mason suggests that the government might be delaying any concrete decisions about benefits until closer to the next election. Why? Because nothing says re-elect me like a last-minute cash injection. It's a cynical view perhaps, but politics is rarely a game of pure altruism. The electorate loves a bit of good news, especially when it comes with a pound sign attached. Of course, this leaves millions of people in a state of limbo, unsure whether they'll be able to pay their bills from one month to the next. It's a high-stakes game of political chess, with the lives of ordinary people as the pawns. Adding fuel to the fire is the ever-present spectre of inflation. It's the unwelcome guest that just won't leave, and it's eating away at everyone's purchasing power. Mason reminds us that even if benefits are increased, there's no guarantee that it will be enough to offset the rising cost of essentials. Food prices are soaring, energy bills are through the roof, and wages are struggling to keep pace. It's a perfect storm of economic misery, and it's leaving many people wondering how they're going to make ends meet. The government's response, or lack thereof, will have very real consequences. Session 4, the uncertain fate of benefits. So, where does this leave us? In a word, uncertain. The government is playing its cards close to its chest, and the future of benefits remains shrouded in mystery. Mason concludes by emphasizing the human cost of this uncertainty. Millions of people are living with anxiety and fear, unsure whether they'll be able to keep a roof over their heads or food on the table. It's a stark reminder that behind the political maneuvering and economic jargon, there are real people whose lives are hanging in the balance. The government's decisions, or lack thereof, will have a profound impact on their lives. Now, you might be thinking, John, this is all very dreary. Can't we have a bit of light relief? And you'd be right, it is bleak, but that's the reality for millions in the UK right now. They're living with the constant fear of not knowing whether they'll be able to afford basic necessities. Imagine, if you will, the stress of opening your bank account and seeing just a few pounds left, with days to go until your next payment. Imagine having to choose between heating your home and feeding your children. This isn't some Dickensian nightmare. It's the lived experience of countless people in 21st century Britain. The mental toll of this uncertainty is immense. It erodes people's dignity, fuels anxiety and depression, and creates a sense of hopelessness. It's a vicious cycle that's difficult to break free from. The longer this uncertainty continues, the more devastating the impact on people's lives. To truly grasp the gravity of this situation, we need to rewind a bit. The UK benefits system, once a beacon of social support, has been systematically chipped away at over the last decade. Austerity measures implemented in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis led to deep cuts in social spending, including benefits. The argument was that these cuts were necessary to reduce the deficit, but critics argue that they disproportionately impacted the most vulnerable in society, pushing many further into poverty. The safety net, designed to catch those who fall on hard times, has become increasingly threadbare. Section 3. A Legacy of Austerity. The legacy of austerity is still felt today. The COVID-19 pandemic further exposed the fragility of the social security system, as millions were plunged into economic uncertainty. While the government did introduce some temporary measures, such as the furlough scheme, these have now ended. The cost of living crisis has only exacerbated the situation. With inflation at a 40-year high, the value of benefits has been eroded at an alarming rate. What was once enough to cover basic needs is now woefully inadequate. This has left many families struggling to make ends meet, forced to rely on food banks and other forms of charitable assistance. Section 4. The productivity puzzle. Now, some might argue that the solution is simple: get people into work, and while it's true that employment is generally the best route out of poverty, it's not always that straightforward. The UK faces a productivity puzzle. Despite record levels of employment, wage growth remains stagnant. This means that even those in work are struggling to keep up with the rising cost of living. In-work poverty is on the rise, with many families relying on benefits to supplement their income. It's a stark reminder that simply having a job is no longer a guarantee of a decent standard of living. Section 5. A call for clarity and compassion. So what's the answer? Well, it's not a simple one. But one thing is clear: the current state of uncertainty is untenable. People need clarity. They need to know what support they can expect from the government. Delaying decisions for political expediency is simply unacceptable. The government needs to provide reassurance that it will protect the most vulnerable in society. This means increasing benefits in line with inflation as a bare minimum. It also means addressing the root causes of poverty, such as low wages and insecure work. It's time for a compassionate and humane approach to social security, one that recognizes the dignity and worth of every individual. To understand the human impact of the benefits system, we need to hear from those directly affected. The Trussell Trust has been sounding the alarm for years. Their CEO describes the situation as dire, with demand for food parcels reaching unprecedented levels. People face impossible decisions choosing between heating and eating. These are real stories of hardship and despair. It's a stark indictment of a failing system. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation, a leading poverty research charity, has also been vocal in its criticism of the government's inaction. Their research paints a bleak picture of a society grappling with a cost of living emergency. Katie Schmuecker, Deputy Director of Policy and Partnerships at JRF, warns that millions of families are facing a perfect storm of rising costs and falling incomes. The cost of essential goods and services, from food and energy to rent and childcare, has been spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, wages have stagnated and benefits have failed to keep pace with inflation. This has created a cost of living gap, where even those in work are struggling to afford the basics. The result is a growing number of people being pushed into poverty, forced to rely on food banks and other forms of charitable assistance. The impact of this crisis on people's mental health cannot be overstated. Living with constant financial insecurity, with the threat of eviction or hunger looming large, takes a heavy toll on mental well-being. The charity Mind has reported a surge in calls to its helplines, with many people citing financial worries as a major source of stress and anxiety. The uncertainty surrounding benefits only adds to the burden. Not knowing how much money you'll have coming in or whether you'll be able to pay your bills creates a sense of chronic stress. This can manifest in a variety of ways, from anxiety and depression to sleeplessness and relationship problems. It's a vicious cycle. Financial insecurity leads to mental health problems, which in turn make it harder to escape poverty. It's all too easy to become desensitized to statistics and economic jargon, but behind every number there's a human story, a story of struggle, of resilience, of quiet desperation. These are our fellow citizens, our neighbors, our friends. They deserve our compassion, our empathy, and most importantly, our action. We need to demand better from our leaders. We need to hold them accountable for the promises they made to protect the most vulnerable. The time for political posturing is over. The time for action is now. Let's not forget the human cost of this crisis. Let's not allow compassion to be eroded by indifference. Some might argue this is dramatic, even hyperbolic, but the UK is already facing a poverty crisis. Over 14 million people live in poverty today. That's more than 1 in 5 people. The situation will worsen without decisive action. The cost of living crisis could push 2 million more into poverty. Nearly a quarter of the UK population would be affected. This is a national disgrace. Poverty leads to poor health, lower education, and reduced life expectancy. It strains public services like the NHS and social care. Poverty affects us all, whether we realize it or not. The most heartbreaking aspect of this crisis is its impact on children. Child poverty rates in the UK are among the highest in the developed world. Rising costs push more children into poverty. Imagine being a child in this situation, going to school hungry, wearing hand-me-downs, missing out on school trips and activities. This robs children of their childhood. Growing up in poverty impacts their life chances. It affects health, education, and well-being, trapping them in a cycle of disadvantage. We are failing an entire generation. So, where do we go from here? The UK stands at a crossroads. We can choose to continue down the path of austerity, chipping away at the social safety net and leaving the most vulnerable to fend for themselves, or we can choose a different path, one that prioritizes compassion, fairness, and social justice. The decisions made by the government in the coming months and years will have a profound impact on the lives of millions of people. Will they choose to protect the most vulnerable and create a fairer society for all? Or will they continue to prioritize economic ideology over human need? The time for complacency is over. The time for action is now. We need to demand better from our leaders. We need to hold them accountable for the promises they made, and we need to stand in solidarity with those who are struggling. The future of the UK depends on it. Right then, folks, there you have it. The UK benefit system, a tangled web of uncertainty and despair, leaving millions in its wake. We've heard from experts, charities, and most importantly, those directly affected. The message is clear. The current system is failing. This isn't just about numbers, spreadsheets, or economic indicators. This is about real people, our fellow citizens struggling to make ends meet in one of the wealthiest nations on earth. The moral imperative is clear. We must do better. We've explored the human cost of this uncertainty, the erosion of the safety net, and the looming threat of poverty. We've seen how this crisis disproportionately affects the most vulnerable children, the elderly, those with disabilities, and low-income families. The government's silence, the delay tactics are simply unacceptable. People need clarity, they need support, and they need it now. It's time for our leaders to step up, to show compassion, and to create a system that truly protects the most vulnerable. So, what can we do? Start by giving a damn. Don't let this be another forgotten news cycle. Talk about it, share this video, make some noise. Apathy is the enemy of progress. Silence makes this situation acceptable. Be the voice for the voiceless, demand better from our leaders, build a fairer, just society. It starts with each of us. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Stay informed, stay engaged, stay angry.